Just to remind you, prokaryotes are example of prokaryotes, archaea and bacteria, or they gave the name of prokaryote simple before nucleus. That means those organisms are made up of cells, of course, but they don't have nucleus, plus they don't have membrane bounded organelles. That's why they classify as a group of prokaryotes.
Prokaryotic cellular respiration. Some prokaryotes also undergo aerobic respiration. Because prokaryotes do not have mitochondria, there are differences in the process. The main difference involves the use of the prokaryotic cellular membrane as the location of electron transport. In eukaryotic cells, pyruvate is transported to the mitochondria. In prokaryotes, this movement is unnecessary, saving the prokaryotic cell 2 ATP and increasing the net total of ATP produced to 38.
So as it says, prokaryotes, because of course they don't have a mitochondria. Prokaryotes, keep in your mind, they don't have mitochondria. So of course, there is no Krebs cycle, there is no, the pyruvate, which is the product of glycolysis, will not move into the Krebs cycle or into the mitochondria. Remember, just to remember, this movement, here it says unnecessary, saving prokaryotic cell 2 ATP. Saving prokaryotic cells to ATP, because this movement going to the Krebs cycle, there is a waste of 2 ATP, so they will save this 2 ATP. Instead of producing 36 ATP, now the total will be 38. So now the total will be 38 ATP molecules. So in eukaryotes, cell aerobic respiration produces 36 ATP. In prokaryotes, of course, we are still in aerobic respiration, they produce up to 38 ATP. Second difference takes place in cytoplasm. Glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm. In prokaryotes, respiration takes place in cell membrane. Why? Simple, because they don't have mitochondria, which is a membrane-bound organelle. Keep in your mind, we are still talking about, we are still in aerobic respiration. We are still in aerobic respiration. In the chapter of bacteria, we just said some bacteria, they respire aerobically and anaerobic. That means we have bacteria, they respire using oxygen, and some they undergo anaerobic respiration. That means they respire without using oxygen. Just to remind you, we are still in aerobic respiration.
Cellular respiration. Summary. Cellular respiration occurs in the cytoplasm and the mitochondria of both plant and animal cells. The process converts glucose and oxygen, O2, into carbon dioxide, CO2, water, and energy in the form of ATP. C6H12O6 plus 6O2Y6CO2 plus 6 hours 2O plus energy, ATP. Cellular respiration is one of two important processes that cells use to obtain energy. Cellular respiration occurs in three phases: glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and electron transport. Glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm of a cell and is known as an anaerobic process. The breakdown of glucose produces two pyruvate molecules, two ATP molecules, and two NADH molecules. The two pyruvate molecules are used as reactants for the next phase of cellular respiration, the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle occurs in the mitochondrial matrix and is an aerobic process. For every one glucose molecule creates two turns of the Krebs cycle. The products of the Krebs cycle, 8-NADH and 2-Phe2, are used in the electron transport chain. The electron transport chain occurs across the inner mitochondrial membrane, between the mitochondrial matrix and the intermembrane space. It is also an aerobic process. The products of the electron transport chain are water and ATP. After the entire process of cellular respiration, one glucose molecule yields 36 ATP molecules under ideal conditions. The energy formed from cellular respiration allows the cells to do work and function.
So, summary, as you know, C6H12O6, which is simple one glucose molecule, in the presence of oxygen, is broken down into carbon dioxide, water, and ATP or energy. Just to remind you, this process, which is cellular respiration, takes place in every single cell. Why? Simple, for cell to get its own energy or to generate, to produce its own ATP that is needed later on for many life processes such as reproduction, enzymatic reactions, or many other metabolic reactions. Every cell, they make their own energy. That's why we call it cellular respiration. It is done or carried in all cells. So 3 phases or 3 stages of cellular respiration. First starts by glycolysis, second Krebs cycle, and the last one is electron transport chain. So summary, divided into 3 phases: glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and electron transport chain. Glycolysis, you are responsible just to know the location, which takes place in cytoplasm. Also, it is known as anaerobic process. So glycolysis in cytoplasm, anaerobic process. What are the products? Yes, 2 pyruvates, 2 ATP, and 2 NADH molecules are this is the net. Those are produced simple from one glucose molecule during glycolysis. So each phase you are responsible for location, product, reactants, and product. For glycolysis takes place in cytoplasm in the absence of oxygen. One glucose molecule is broken down into 2 pyruvate, 2 ATP, 2 Na, 2 NADH. 2 pyruvates will enter the Kreb cycle or will enter the next phase, which is known as the Kreb cycle. Again, Kreb cycle, its location takes place in the matrix of mitochondria. Matrix of mitochondria. Plus it is aerobic respiration. Now, in the presence of oxygen, over here it says it is anaerobic process. Glycolysis anaerobic, matrix aerobic. For every 1 glucose, because it gave us 2 pyruvates, so the cycle will turn twice. Each glucose produce 2 pyruvates. Now the Krebs cycle will turn twice. The products of Krebs cycle are 8 NADH, 12 ADH2, that they will move to they are going to move to the ETC or electron transport chain. Here, just to remind you, the products of Krebs cycle, here we have preparatory phase plus Krebs cycle. Preparatory phase plus Krebs cycle, that's why we had 8 NADH and 12 ADH2. The last phase, which is electron transport chain, location, of course, inner membrane of mitochondria, or simple, you can just say cristea, takes place in cristea or inner membrane of mitochondria. Also, aerobic process. So, in mitochondria, aerobic respiration. Outside the mitochondria, which is cytoplasm, where glycolysis takes place, where we have anaerobic respiration. So from those 3 stages or from those 3 phases, one glucose molecule just yields to 36 ATP molecules in the ideal condition. When we say ideal, when oxygen or everything is normal. When I have energy formed from cell respiration, cells to work and function. That's why respiration takes place in every single cell. Every cell will respire in order to produce in its own energy, or the energy that they need to carry out its specific functions. Figure-wise, here the summary with the figures, starting with glycolysis. This is the summary of all. Glycolysis in cytoplasm produces 2 ATP. This is the yield, or the net product, sorry. 2 ATP, 2 pyruvates. Each pyruvate will enter the Krebs cycle. Each pyruvate will enter the Krebs cycle. So of course here you have 2 pyruvates. So the Krebs cycle will turn twice per 1 glucose molecule. Per 1 glucose molecule. Here of course it's going step by step. Glucose. The name process is glycolysis, will give me pyruvate. Pyruvate will enter the Krebs cycle. Of course, glycolysis, the products are 2 ATP, 2 NADH, and 2 pyruvates molecule. This is simple for glycolysis. As you see, the end product is 2 NADH, 2 NADH, 2 pyruvate, 2 ATP molecule. For Krebs cycle, as we said, when we say Krebs cycle, you have to take into consideration preparatory phase plus Krebs cycle. Unless the question is only preparatory phase, so you have to answer only what produced in preparatory phase. But when we say the end of Krebs cycle, so including preparatory phase and Krebs cycle. And we said the products of the Krebs cycle is 8 NADH, or at the end of the Krebs cycle we have 8 NADH, 2 FADH2, 2 ATP molecules, of course, including 6 carbon dioxide molecules. In the text, they didn't mention carbon dioxide because carbon dioxide, it is a waste. They are interested only in the energy that produced per glucose. They are interested only energy produced per glucose.
The electron transport